Welcome online as well. I'm so glad you're here. We are wrapping up a series called Colossians today. And in this series, what we've been doing is looking at just one book in the Bible. It's a letter written from Paul to the New Testament church. And the reason he wrote it to us is that in his day, and it's still true today, that everybody was starting to say, look, there's so much more to being a follower of Christ than just following Jesus. You've got to do all these rules and regulations. And some of you feel like that. Some of you are new with this and you're saying, give me the checklist, right? And Paul says, that's not it. It's about Jesus. And so we're going to wrap up today. We've just been looking at one chapter at a time, and many of you have been reading along with us. There's so much more in there for your life, your success, for you living a fulfilled life than what we were able to touch in 4 weeks. But we started out, we said the first chapter, and this is, Paul deals with it right away. He said this, and let's read it together. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. It's not about me acting a certain way, doing or don't doing. It's what Jesus did for me on the cross. Jesus plus nothing. He said, don't add those rules. We looked at chapter 2, and in chapter 2, Paul says, you need to really know this truth. Remember this truth. Rely on this truth of who Jesus is, because in that truth and who Jesus is all of our potential. So we said this, your potential, my potential begins and ends with Jesus. That's it. And so I don't have to look beyond that. I look to Jesus, and what he says to us is that we're his masterpiece. He says that we are his greatest creation. He says that he has a plan for us. Anybody glad for that? Wherever you're at today, you need to know, he says, I have a plan for you, for good works, for your future. And it's a future of hope. Everybody say hope. Man, aren't you glad for that? Some of you right now, you're going, man, I hope life gets better than this. And I want to tell you there's a hope and a future and a plan. That's what he has for you. Your potential begins and ends with Jesus. Then last week, as we looked at the beginning of chapter 3, we said this, because Paul says, look, since you have new life, he's pointing back to that whole first chapter. Everything begins, or Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Because in that chapter, he said, the secret is this, Christ in you. You know, what's the secret to life? The secret is this, Christ in you. And so, again, he points back and he says that new life thrives in a healthy environment. And we talked about how we need to shift our attitude, that the environment is right here within us. It's not about this environment out here, but the environment that we have, that we create that environment. And that's how we grow in this new life. Now, this week, if you've been reading chapter 3, I'm going to actually take the end of chapter 3 and the beginning of chapter 4 today. And then this week, I want to challenge you to read chapter 4 in Colossians. If you've missed any of these talks, and you can always go back, church online. You can do this too, alivechurch.com. We archive everything, and I'd encourage you to catch up. This is a great study. The book of Colossians is an important letter in our lives. So today, I'm going to go over a couple verses. Now, I'm going to start in verse 23 of chapter 3, because there's a few verses in there. Some of you, if you're following along your Bibles or your YouVersion, you're saying, what about verses 18 through 21? All those things about relationships. Well, those are very important verses. In fact, so important that we're doing a series in just a couple of weeks that really is going to expand those verses. So I'm not going to look at those few verses today. In fact, I want you to see what's coming up. Watch this. So future family. How many of you would agree family's important? Yeah. You know, we all have them. You may not like your family. We all know we didn't get to choose who our family was going to be that we're born into. Isn't that true? And so we're going to expand those verses in a series called Future Family. It starts in a few weeks. Mark your calendar, September 13th through October 5th. We're going to start the weekend. In fact, when you pulled in today, I know Church Online, you didn't get to see this, but you're going to see the ads all over the place and the banners. But we have banners on the road. It's a weekend that we're going to have a big event. Invite your friends. We're going to cook out, have the jumping castles as we kick off Future Family. So you won't want to miss that. And I'm going to begin that weekend back here in Colossians chapter 3, verses 18 through 21. So today, I want to jump ahead to Colossians 3:23. I want you guys to read this with me, okay? Church Online, let's read this first line together. Work willingly at whatever you may do, as though you were working for yourself rather than for people. I know. Isn't that how we feel, some of us, though? I'm doing this for me. Or how about this one? As though we're working for the man rather than for people. So that changes my attitude. Now, you see, Paul just talked in this chapter about our relationship with our family and with others. And now he says, let's talk about your relationship with your work. So this is an important part of our lives. We spend a lot of our lives at work. And what Paul says is, work isn't a four-letter word, basically. Mike kind of joked about that, but that's how some of us think of it, as a four-letter word, and it's terrible. Versus, this is an attitude shift for many of us to say, you know what? I need to see work as my ministry. That I'm not working for the man or myself or even for my family, and that's a great cause. But the reason I work is because I'm working for the Lord and for His glory. And that the way I do my work is a reflection of Him. You see, that changes everything. Work willingly as though you were working for who? The Lord, rather than for people. Now, I asked you what your thoughts are, and several of you, you've been responding already. I hear my phone just going off like crazy. One word, first word that comes when you think of the word work. Somebody said burden. Progress. I like that. A couple progresses. And here somebody said joy. I love that, man. Joy. I mean, if you have a choice between going to work and it's a burden or joy, what do you want? Some of you aren't sure. This is going to be a good talk for you. What do you want, joy or burden? Some of you still aren't sure. It's okay. Somebody said future, stretched, stressful. How about anybody come up with the word stress? That's, yeah, stress. Somebody said no! Exclamation, exclamation. Somebody else said women. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not even going to try to pretend, okay, guys? I know I get you in trouble, son. You're not getting me in that kind of trouble. Here's stress, stress, stress. Boy, here's a paragraph. I said one word, so I won't read the paragraph. Somebody else said ugh with like 10 U's. Ugh. So how do you feel about word? It's not a four-letter word. What I want you to do today is I want to look at Colossians 3:23 and a little bit further down and what Paul tells us about work. Because some of you see that and you're going, oh, it is, I don't like it. I grew up with an attitude. My family, it was a bad thing. Instead of seeing it as ministry, you see it as a four-letter word. And it's ministry. And today is all about an attitude shift to see that, man, this is ministry. This is a place of fulfillment and a place of joy. You're going to spend a lot of life there. So if Jesus wants us to have a rich and satisfying life, that includes work. And Paul gives us the secret to how that works. He says, work willingly as though you're working for the Lord. As though you're working for the Lord. Now I want to wrap it up in just a short saying today. Whatever I do and say, this is really corny, isn't it? And if you think it's corny, I didn't come up with it this week. If you think it's genius, it's all me, okay? I don't know. Whatever, let's read it together. Church Online, read this right where you're at. Read it out loud with us. Whatever I do and say, I represent Christ today. Now, that's true of with our families, and he's talked about those relationships with our neighbors, and it's especially true in our work. Whatever we do or say, we represent Christ today. So how I do my work makes a difference because I represent Christ. I'm working for Him. What I say, it represents Him. This feels like it could almost be a rap, doesn't it? Whatever I do, no, we're not going to go there. Hopefully you'll remember this week. Whatever I do or say, I represent Christ today. One more time, let's read together. Whatever I do and say, I represent Christ today. Even in my work? Yeah. But Jeff, you don't understand. I hate my job. I get that. I totally get that. But today's all about a shift. Because it's not about what you do, it's about how you do it. And I'm going to show you, the more you live this out, the more you'll begin to move into places where you love your work. And it all starts in here. It kind of goes back last week, this healthy environment. Here's what Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 22 through 4 and 1. I'm going to give you a couple verses. He says, and we'll put this in the context of where we live today. He says, obey your earthly masters in everything you do. Okay, right away, some of you are going, wait a minute. I don't have an earthly master. That's okay. He's got a verse for you. If you're the business owner, you're the leader, and you answer to no one, he knew that you'd be here today. And so he said, I got another verse just for them, okay? It's coming up. He said, we're to obey them, and we're to try to please them all the time. So who's my earthly masters? Well, it's the people I answer to. It's my boss, my shift manager. It's the person I'm accountable to. Maybe it's the owner. For me, a board of trustees. Maybe it's a board of directors for you if you're a CEO. Who is it that you answer to? He says, because of your reverent fear of the Lord. Why would I do this? Because whatever I do or say represents Christ. How I do my work, how I respond to them, it represents Christ to them. Now, for those of you who say, man, I'm the business owner, I answer to no one. Paul goes on to say, he says, masters. Everybody say masters. This is leaders, business owners, managers. He says, remember, let's read it together. Church Online, read with us. Remember that you also have a master in heaven. And the reality is, not only do we have a master in heaven, that's who we answer to more than anybody else. If you're a business owner, you have people you answer to. It's your employees. You know, employees, you need to know this. Your business owner, he or she is the one that goes to bed at night. And they're concerned about you as a family and keeping the business going so that you can keep your family going. And that's true of you, leaders, owners. You need to know that. Those employees are depending on you to make right and wise decisions to keep the business successful and going. They're counting on that. And if they're worried about that, you're going to have some trouble in your relationship with them. And not only that, but if you're a master, if you're a leader or a business owner, you answer to those customers. Isn't that true? I mean, if they don't, the stores I go in, if they don't answer to me and, please me and give me the product I want, I don't go back, right? You guys the same way? Yeah. It's same here at church. I mean, if the experience isn't good, you had a horrible experience, you're like, I'm finding another church. But thankfully, you came in here and had a great experience, right? This is an awesome place. Yeah, well, I love it. How could you not like a live church, right? I know. Remember, if you're a business owner, you feel like you answer to no one, yeah, we still answer to someone. We have a master in heaven, so whatever I do or say, I represent Christ. Now I'm going to give you 2 verses from other places just about work. Let me just kind of set up God's thoughts on work. And Paul gives us this in different places. I realize today, some of you don't have jobs. You're looking for work. I know that because I read the prayer requests and I pray for you every week. Today, at the end of the service, I'm going to pray for you to find a job. Some of you are in a position where you say, well, Jeff, I'm disabled and I can't work. And I'll tell you as we go through this how this applies to you. Because as long as you're alive, God still has a purpose and plan for your life. And you see what you do every day is ministry. Others of you may say, well, I'm retired. I don't have to work anymore. Listen, you don't retire from life, okay? You may retire from a job you had, but you need to see that you are re-upping when it comes to ministry. As long as you have a breath, as long as you have a pulse, God has a plan for you to do good things for Him. So everybody's on board, right? Yeah, some of you are like, oh man, I came in here retired and now I'm re-upping. Yeah! We don't want you to just, retire. If retirement is just about coasting, you only coast downhill. God has something more for you, and it's called ministry. And what He has us doing with our skills, it's ministry. So here's a couple things He says about work. 2 Thessalonians, he says, those unwilling to work will not eat. Yet we hear that some of you are living idle lives, refusing to work and meddling in other people's business. Now, isn't it true that the person who works the least in your business, that person who's always trying to get out of work, they're the meddlers? Isn't that right? It's true in every group of people. I mean, in the church, you know who complains the most? The people who do nothing. Yeah, the ones who sit back and do nothing, they know it all, and they're ready to call the shots. That's true of your family. It's true every people group, that's the way it is. The meddlers are always the ones who are living idle lives. Okay, so nobody wants to be that, do you? How many of you are sitting next to that? No, just don't. Don't raise your hand. I already saw some of you go, see there, I told you. Just talking to you today. And some of you right now are thinking, oh, I wish so-and-so were here. No, let's take this for us, okay? I don't want to get to that place in my life. And God says that if we're unwilling to work, that, man, we don't even eat. He's given us this as a gift. Now, here's what he tells us. Here's what he says if we start to getting a little lazy. Let's read it together. Church Online, let's read it out loud. We command such people work to earn their own living. I mean, that's who we're supposed to be. You know, God worked for 6 days and then he rested. You know, some of us, we were for 2 or 3 days and we're like, man, I need 4 days of rest. And I'm going to talk to you about rest here in a minute because that's important too. But you're okay up to 6 days. You're good, okay? Everybody say 6 days. Yeah, that's how we were created. That's what we were created for. So I know if you're doing the 3-day thing, that's great for you, but you just need to know you're all right. All you type A's, all you who love work like me, you're okay up to 6 days, okay? 6 days, we're all right. And we do that. It's an honor, man. It's part of how God's created us. Here's what he says to, again, people with work. He says, and this is important for us, if you're a leader, a business owner, and you're writing the paychecks, you need to see that this is something people earn. You're not doing them a favor, okay? If you're writing that paycheck and like, oh, they make more than they should make it. No, you're not doing them a favor. When people work, their wages are not a gift. They've earned them. It's something they have earned. Never be lazy, so we earn our wages. And I really want to stress this for those who would say that I'm the masters. I'm one of those masters. I'm a leader. If you begrudgingly write checks to your workers, you need to see they earn it. They deserve it. You need to celebrate that they've done this job. Now, for all of us, he says, let's read this together, okay? This is so good for us. I love this stuff, okay? Church Online, let's read it together. Never be lazy, but work hard. Whoa, work how? Hard. Work hard. Why? Because whatever I do or say, I represent Christ today. Say it with me. Whatever I do or say, I represent Christ today. Can you imagine if somebody hires you and you're a lazy person, and then you say, oh, by the way, I go to a live church and I'm a follower of Christ. Do you know what their thoughts are? I'm not going to that church, and I sure don't want anything to do with Christianity. We don't want that, and thank goodness that's not what I hear about you guys at a live church. Work hard, he says, and serve the Lord enthusiastically. He puts those two together. Hard work and serving the Lord enthusiastically, seeing that my work it's ministry. It's not some 4-letter word, but to realize this is my ministry. The Lord has put me here, and wherever you are right now, you're there, and God wants to use you. And I know some of you are in college, and you're like, Jeff, you don't understand. I'm just working an hourly job trying to get through school. Don't underestimate that God has you there in your work, and what he wants to do through that. He wants to use you. That's ministry. This is an attitude shift for some of us, but you need to see that. Let's read it one more time. Whatever I do and say, I represent Christ today. Now, before we go further, I want to ask you, how do you look at your work? It may be like this guy. I want you to watch.
Every day is the same. Up at 6, shower by 6:30, dressed by 6:40, hot cup of coffee, breakfast on the run, out the door by 7, work by 8, more coffee. And then all day I can't really even tell you what I do. I pass the time until my real life can resume at 5. And I drink lots of coffee. I guess I live for the weekends and for 2 glorious weeks of vacation a year. For 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 2,000 hours a year, I do this. If I manage to retire from this job at 65, it means that I will have done this for over 70,000 hours. 70,000? That's 9 years of my life. This is what my life is about. This is my territory, this cube, these tasks, these accomplishments, this horrible coffee. What am I doing with my life? They told me that Jesus loves me and has a wonderful plan for my life, but this hardly seems to qualify. I'm grateful for a job. I'm a hard worker. I'm not opposed to work. It's just that I want my life to mean something. And I know I should be satisfied with spreading some love to my coworkers, but is it enough? I want to have a passion for what I do. And I want to know that it has purpose. I want adventure. I want fulfillment. I want more. But I have to pay the bills too and meet my responsibilities. My family is counting on me. Honestly, I don't know how to balance it all. I feel stuck and lost and confused, and I'm afraid that I'm wasting my life. What time is it? Only 9? 8 more hours.
I hope you don't feel like that. But if you do, I get it, and I want you to know there's hope. There is hope. Because our work is our ministry. And there's a purpose in that. God's placed us right where we're at. Whatever I do and say, I represent Christ today. That includes my job, especially my job. Now, we need to, here's what we do about that. Here's how we can live this out. We need to recognize that work is a gift from God. Say this last part with me. It's a what? Gift from God. Work is a gift from God. And I know some of you, man, you're looking for work. You've been looking for a while, and you're going, yeah, I get that. You know, some of you trade places with that person who says, oh, I hate my job right now just to have a paycheck, put food on the table. It's a gift from God. It's not a gift just so that we can make money. It's a gift because He wants to use us there. He wants to use us in ministry and influence there. Now, we're going to talk next week a little bit about ministry around here. I'm going to dive into that as we start the series, Focus, and how that will really focus our lives, not only seeing our work as ministry, but our lives, every area of our lives, and our church ministry, and being focused on that. How do I do this? How do I live this out? How do I recognize that this is a gift from God? I want to give you 3 things. First of all, I need to use my skills and abilities. I need to use my skills and abilities. And I know right now, I could hear somebody just say, oh, you don't know. I'm in a job where I can't use my skills and abilities. I'm going to say, use your skills and abilities. We have a lady on staff here. She is so important for what we do in ministry. Her name's Sharon. And her first year on staff, she was using skills and abilities, and I had her in a position, we hired her for communications. And she was doing great at that. She did a great job at it. But every time she had a chance, she'd start speaking about the weekends. And she would always, if there was an opportunity, she'd jump in and do something. And finally, one day, we were at this staff gathering meeting, and we were talking about some of the frustrations. I mean, if you leave the details in my hands, you're in trouble. And I know I get a lot of credit. People think I'm organized and we're planning ahead. There's none of that's me. It's the incredible staff that we have. And so one day she said, well, you know, I could help out a lot more with the weekends. In fact, that's what I used to do. And we had all seen that, yeah, when she puts her skills and abilities to use there, that the weekend's better. And we came away from that and we're like, well, that's a no-brainer. Let's shift you. Do you love that? Yeah, I love it. And we moved her over there to run the weekends. She produces the weekends. And all of a sudden, everybody in the church are like, something's different about our weekends. You guys are really doing great. Why? Because Sharon took over that part of the job. And she's able to use her skills and abilities. But she didn't wait until I gave her the position. She was already doing it. In the Bible, there's a guy that was like that, Joseph. If you've ever read his story, go back in the Old Testament, you can read it. He knew that God wanted him to be a great leader. Guess where he ended up? Prison. You know what it says about him in prison? It says the prison guards never had to worry about anything because he was such a great leader in there. He would lead all the other prisoners and take care of things and whatever they wanted. He made sure it happened. And you say, oh, you don't understand my prison, my life, it's horrible. Be Joseph. God will develop your skills and abilities so when the opportunity comes, and the opportunity came, Joseph ended up being the prince, actually ended up being the one who ran the country after that. He got out of prison and ran the country. And I've often thought, I wonder what his job would have been had he not been faithful while he was in prison in the job he didn't like. You know what I think? He may have been a Circle K worker or something. I don't know. And I'm not saying anything about Circle K. I'm just saying if you go from president to Circle K, although if I had a choice between being president of the United States or Circle K worker, I'm all in for Circle K worker. You guys know what I'm talking about? I really don't want that stress. Here's what Paul says in Ephesians 2:10. You're God's workmanship. This is in the NIV. The NLT says you're his masterpiece. And he says this, you're created to do what? Good works. You're created to do good works. You may not feel like you're in that right position to do that right now, but I'm telling you, just do the good works right where you're at. And the more you do that, use your skills and abilities, the more faithful you're at, the more God will bless you. It's not about getting the right job and quitting the wrong job. It's about changing in here and saying, if my job is shifting or shoveling sand, I had that job for a while. And I decided when I got that job, I said, I'm going to be the best shoveler of sand they've ever seen. And that's what they told me before I left. Like, I wanted to hear them say it. I did it for 3 months, in between college. I'm like, there is nothing in my life that I wanted to, I can't wait to shovel sand someday. Man, I had blisters. I said, I don't care. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to keep up better than anybody. Do good works. Be good. Why? Because whatever I do and say it with me, I represent Christ today. Number 2, start my workday with prayer. Now, it's not an accident that Paul puts this verse next. He's just talked to us in chapter 3, about our relationships with our family. And now he's starting to talk about work. And one of the things we have to be careful of is that we don't get this silo effect, or we get this compartmentalizing of things where we say, okay, my spiritual life's here, my family life's here, my work's here. So when I'm at church on the weekend, I act like a good person. With my family, it depends on my mood, and at work, I hate it, and I'm a grump. You don't do that. Basically, Paul tells us in this letter from chapter 1 all the way to 4, he says, the secret is this, it's Christ. You are representing Christ, and Christ is living in you in every area. You don't compartmentalize this. This will set you free. And so he says, look, you need to be praying about every part of your life, your family relationships, your spiritual journey, and your work life. Let's read this together. Here's what he tells us to do right after talking about work and relationships. Devote yourselves to, come on with enthusiasm, devote yourselves to prayer with an alert mind and a thankful heart. Man, that I'm praying for my boss. I'm praying for my customers. I'm praying for my work. You're saying, that's embarrassing, Jeff, that I'm grabbing their hands and praying. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying start your workday with prayer. Say, Lord, I believe this today, that whatever I do or say, I represent you, Jesus, today. Would you show me the opportunities? I pray for my boss. You know that person who bugs you at work more than anybody else, that jerk? They rub you wrong. Pray for them. See that God has placed you there for them to minister to them. And if that bothers you a little, realize this. The sooner you minister to them and help them become all God wants them to be, the faster you get through that. Look at it selfishly if you want. Pray for them. Pray for the success of your business. God has placed you there to bless your business. If you're a follower of Christ, you need to walk into work every day and realize, man, God's going to use me to bless these folks today, to bless my company. If you're not a Christian, and you say, I'm just checking out Christianity, and you have that sense of, man, there's more to life. There is. And that all of this adds up to a purpose and a plan. Work is not just work. It's a ministry. God wants us to be praying about. He's placed us there to be a person of prayer over our work. In Galatians 6:4, he says, pay careful attention to your own work. And this is important when we're praying and really being successful at our own job. He says, for then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done. Whose work am I supposed to pay close attention to? Yours. Yeah, you should be praying for your work. And get your eyes off of everybody else. I know, if you're in any kind of a large company at all, or maybe even a small company, there's always one person that doesn't do their job, and you have to pick up the slack, right? And if you're sitting there saying, we don't have a person like that in our business, you may be that person. So You know, you think everything's great, and they're talking about you. But listen, there's always that one person. You quit worrying about how they're doing their job. It's not about them. This is about you. Whatever you do or say, you represent Christ today. So pay careful attention to your job, and then you'll have satisfaction. You'll be able to come home at night and feel fulfilled and lay down and go to sleep at night without feeling that guilt of, man, can you imagine if we as a church, as Christians all over the world started saying, you know what, I'm going to be the best I can be today in my job every day because I represent Christ. I'm going to give it my all. That's a part of my ministry. It's a part of my witness. And I'm going to just focus on me doing it. Can you imagine how that changes our community? How that changed business world? It just changes things completely. You become suddenly, as Christians, we become the people, everybody's saying, that's who I want to hire. People may say, I'm not a Christian, don't even believe in it, but I know those Christians, and that's who I want to hire. They're faithful. They get the job done. I can trust them. That's who we should be. That's who we should be. Whatever I do or say, let's read it again. Whatever I do and say, I represent. Are you guys getting that? Am I annoying you yet with it? Oh, then I haven't done it enough. Let's do it one more time then, with enthusiasm, okay? Whatever I do and say, I represent Christ. Let me give you a third thing. Be intentional. What do I mean by that? I mean, wake up every morning and say, okay, God, you've given me this job. And I'm going in with the idea that you have me here to serve in ministry. You have me in here to do good works. And you may be praying and saying, Lord, this isn't the job I want the rest of my life. If you're in college, that's probably true of you. Some of you are in your 30s and 40s and you've been just dragging along. This is about an internal change. And the more intentional you are about saying, God, this is ministry and this is for your glory, that's what I've given my life to, the more he'll move you into places of blessing, places where you feel more fulfillment. Just find that right where you're at. He says this, and Paul kind of wraps this all together because he's talked about relationships with families and he's talked about our relationship with our work, and he says this, live wisely among those who are not believers. You see, when it comes to our mission here at Alive, we say that we are all about leading people who are far from God to be followers of Jesus. And we break that down into 3 words. Lead, train, send. Say those with me. Lead, train, send. We're leading people to Jesus, we're training people to follow Jesus, and we're sending people to lead for Jesus. Now, a lot of times when people hear that word send, I hear them say, oh, so you're trying to raise up a bunch of pastors or missionaries to send them over to other continents, and we're like, no. We want to raise up people who are not followers of Christ to become followers of Christ. We want to train them to be successful in that. And that's what we have classes around here. That's what we're all about on the weekends. And then we want to send them into their workplace, send them into their family life to be ministers for Jesus. You see, your ministry, we look at this and we say, not only is ministry here, and again, we're going to talk about that next week as we start Focus, but your ministry is at work. You're sent there. We believe that about you. We believe it so much that in our foundations class, we do things where we help you discover your God-given skills and abilities, to help you develop your skills, how you get better at those. Some of you are saying, I don't even know what my skills are. Sometimes skills are so natural and abilities are so natural, you think everybody can do them, and they can't. You've got a gift. And we believe in it so much that we even do personality tests and say, God's giving you this personality, and here's how he'll use you best. Take this into the workplace. We're committed to helping you succeed in this. Why? Because we are sent. We're sent into our community, into our workplace, into our families. Live wisely among those who are not believers. Make the most of every opportunity. That's what it means to be sent. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. This is a part of our life at work, that we would live that way. Why? Because whatever I do and say, I represent Christ. That's just going to annoy you all week, isn't it? I know all these corny ones that people are like, I can remember that one. You know, I come up with these deep spiritual ones, and everybody says, I don't remember that. But I remember this corny stuff, you know. So I know that Mike Gray, if you think it's corny, Mike Gray came up with it. If it's really good, you go, hey, Jeff, that was pretty good, okay? One more time, say it with me. Whatever I do or say, I represent Christ today. Now, I want to give you one more thing real quick. I want to talk to you about a day of rest. Okay, in the Bible, it's called a Sabbath, and some people say it's a certain day. Well, we see that's not true when we come into the New Testament and the cross and grace, that changes. And Jesus says this. It says, Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people. Yeah, it's not to meet the needs of the church or just to go to church. It's to meet the needs of people. Jesus was very clear about this. You see, I want to talk to those of you who are workaholics. You love your work. You wrote in and said fulfillment, love. I'm one of those, okay? Honestly, my wife did not know what I was talking about this weekend. And yesterday, we had one of those moments where she came in, shut the bedroom door, and she said, we need to talk. And guys, you know what that's like when your wife says that and she closes the door so that the kids can't come in. I'm like, oh. I'm like, no, another one? You know, I mean, that's good. What'd I do now? Anyway, she said, look, you are working so much right now. You got to slow down. I need more time with you. And I get that because I love work. I find so much fulfillment in that. So let me talk to you all for just a moment. You need a day of rest. You got to do that. It's okay to work up to 6 days. And some of you are like, 4 days is my limit. That's okay. But we're allowed to work up to 6 days. I take full advantage of that. But we have to have that day of rest. We are designed for that. If you're an employer, you're a business owner here today, you need to know that for your people. You're not getting their best if you don't make sure that they get their rest. You got to make sure of that. And if you're just saying, well, we're going to push through and I'm going to make them work more hours and then we'll succeed, it doesn't work that way. There becomes a tipping point where they're so tired they do worse work. It's your responsibility as a leader to make sure they get their rest, their vacation time, time with their family. You know, there's sometimes around here, some of the guys, man, they're so committed. And I'm like, you haven't been with your family. This other stuff can wait. Go. You need to do that. You need to do that for yourselves as well. Take advantage of the time off and rest. Now, here's how to have a great Sabbath. This is Jeff's tips. Everybody say Jeff's tips. This isn't Paul. This isn't Jesus. These are my tips. These two are my tips, okay? If you work with your hands, rest by using your mind. Okay? If you're gifted at working with your hands, you're skilled at that, you know, you may want to read a book or something. You don't want to go home and do, it's like they say, a builder's house is never finished, a mechanic's car is never runs right, but everybody else's car does, right, that he fixes. Well, why is that? Because he doesn't want to work with his hands when he gets home. So know that. That's true about you. You want to rest by using your mind. Maybe you'll want to read a book, read more. If you work with your mind, rest by using your hands. So I work with my mind most of the time as a pastor. So that's why I work by using my hands. That's why I'm an artist. My wife will tell you on my day off, I'm usually up early, starting to paint, working with my hands. I find so much rest in that. That's how I rest, is by doing that. Because people will often say, well, don't you just read the whole time you're off and you read like through the whole Bible on your 2-week vacation? I'm like, are you kidding me? The last thing I do on vacation or a day off is read, because that's all I do all week long. I read constantly. So I'd like to do things with my hand. Now, I do read the Bible on my days off. I'm not saying that. But I read just like everybody else. Give me one verse, and that's my nugget, and let's go for it. I'm not digging in at that point because that's all I do. So work with your hands. You'll find all of a sudden it just rejuvenates me to work with my hands as an artist during the week or during the days off, and then come back and work with my mind. So whatever you are, some of you may need to get a hobby. Everybody say hobby. I know if you're working with your mind, you need a hobby or whatever it is. Now, I want you, if you would, take out your connection card. Next step this week, Colossians chapter 4. Let's end the series by reading the last chapter, Colossians chapter 4. Why do we do this? Because what I commit to is what I become. I've been praying for you guys. A lot of you have been reading through this, and we've been seeing the feedback. It's been such a great privilege just to read with you in Colossians. Check that off, and I'm going to be praying for you this week. You guys praying for me, right, as I read? I'm not batting 1,000%, but hey, my batting average goes up when I do this. So that's what I want to see you do. Now, let's say it one more time before we wrap this up, okay? Drop those in the offering buckets here in just a moment. One more time with absolute enthusiasm. Whatever I do and say. Very good. Now, can you imagine how our community would be different if we all lived like this? You imagine, not only this church, but just this church, but if every church did it. But let's start with us. How would our community change if we went into the work world and we said, you know what, I am sent to do this and represent Him here in my job. I'm going to be the best worker I can be. Maybe I'm not using all my gifts and skills yet, but I'm going to do the best I can right where I'm at. How does that change our community? And that's what we're about. We are sent to represent Christ. Let's pray together. Father, thank you, Lord, for the wisdom that you give us to navigate through work in our lives. And that we would see work, it really is a gift from you. And Lord, even as I'm praying that, I know there are some folks right now that they don't have jobs. They're listening to my voice, or they're here, and they've been looking for work. And if that's you right now, I just want to join you in prayer. We're praying for you. You write that on your connection card. We're praying for you. We'll continue to pray for you. If that's you, Lord, I pray for that person right now. Would you open the opportunities, open the doors this week, lead them to that place of work so that they can provide for themselves, for their families. Lord, and help them to see that it's an opportunity of ministry. Would you open that door? Let your provision be seen. We believe you're our provider. And Lord, I pray for all of us as we go out of here today that we would say, oh, I see this. I'm sent. I am sent into my workplace that whatever I do or say, I'm representing Christ. Give us that attitude shift. And if that's you, just say, Lord, change my heart and my attitude right now. Use me in my work environment. And Lord, there are those who are they're at a place of retirement, or maybe they can't work right now. Would you show them, Lord, how you want them to use their gifts, their skills, their personalities for your kingdom and ministry? Because you have good works for them still to do. We believe that. It's what you said in your word. Now, if you're here and you're not a follower of Jesus, that's where it begins. To know that he has a purpose and plan for your life. More. There is more. It's good works in him. A good purpose, a good plan, a good future. Just invite him into your life right now. Just say this. Say, Lord, I ask you to forgive my sins. Remove the guilt and shame of my past. Let me begin a relationship with you. And let the rest of my life represent you. In Jesus' name, amen.
In just about 2 minutes, the ushers are going to come forward and receive our tithes and offerings, as well as your completed connection cards. So if you'll finalize those. If you made any decisions today, be sure to check those on your connection card so that we can be praying for you this week. And like Jeff, I've really enjoyed this reading through Colossians each week. It's been, I have a reading plan, but I added this to it. It's really been a great, fun, fulfilling. I get something new almost every day in that process. I have a couple of things to talk to you about. Discover Alive. Jeff mentioned our class process. If you've been around for a while or you're new to us, if you haven't attended Discover Alive, that is your next step. Check it on your card. Join us for that class. It's a great class. It really helps you frame what a live church is about, so you can for sure know if this is the right church for you. We want to be real transparent in that. And we have 2 of those coming up. Check those and sign up for that. And then that's the transition that will transition you into the foundation classes, where we'll help you discover what is your purpose. Where should you be putting your effort and energy in your work? That is something you need to do. You need to discover that. So check that on your box and on the card and drop it in the box. Ushers, if you would, come forward and receive our tithes and offerings. So, anybody else want that kind of focus? Yeah. Anybody catch yesterday? Guy shot a 59 in a golf tournament. All of you golfers know what that is. He was on pace at one point to shoot a 56. Unbelievable. Focus. So that kind of focus in your life, in your family, in your work, we want you to have that, and we're going to be talking about that in our Focus series. And in turn, we want you to partner with us. So next week, we're going to fill out a Live Church Focus survey, and we're going to do that live during the service. So next week is your opportunity to partner with us to help us focus and do what we do in leading, training, and sending people for Christ. So be sure to be back next week. Fill this out. It'll be a great series. You won't want to miss it. And our prayer team is in the corner, and they would love to pray with you today. If you have any prayer needs, see them before you leave, and you're dismissed. I'll see you next week.
Value is not worth the price, so just let it go.